Well, good morning again. Several summers ago, my side of the family decided to rent a beach house in York Beach, Maine. I flew up to New York and then got into a car with my parents, my brother, my sister-in-law, and my then 3-year-old niece, Emma Jane. And we drove the 5 hours from central New York to Maine. And Emma Jane was an amazing car driver. She was incredibly funny. She kept me entertained the entire 5 hours. And you can see a little picture of her inside your bulletin. Emma Jane basically came out of the womb as an outdoor girl. It seemed like as soon as she was able to walk, she was off exploring her world. She loved to dig in the dirt, jump into really muddy streams. She watched bugs for hours, watching them build their little homes. She also loves to get messy doing art projects. That graphic we've been using for this series is one of her pieces of art. Emma Jane does not mind in the slightest getting grubby or dirty. She is a little pint-sized adventurer, and she is ready for everything. And yet, back then, at the age of 3, she also had an inexplicably powerful love for sparkly pink tutus. Every day when we got ready for the beach, we would put on her clothes and she would insist on putting a tutu over whatever she was wearing. A swimsuit, sparkly pink tutu. Shorts or pants, tutu pulled on over them. Even her pajamas at night, a tutu. And the tutus were all predominantly a shade of pink, liberally sprinkled with sparkles. It was a complete hoot watching Emma Jane run up and down the beach each day. She was so full of joy that you could see it spreading to the adults around her. You couldn't help but smile, seeing her run for hours and hours up and down the beach, chasing the seagulls with that tutu flowing around her and squealing with delight when they were always just out of reach. Emma Jane has also always had an amazing ability to find joy in just about every situation. And she made friends everywhere she went on that beach. When my mom and I went out earlier than usual one morning and Emma wasn't quite ready to join us, an elderly man sitting underneath a tent near us looked over and with a very disappointed voice said, "Hey, where's Tutu Girl?" Every single person in Emma's path was a potential new best friend. And it was amazing to see people respond to her as she toddled up to them and said, "Hi, I'm Emma Jane. What's your name? What's your favorite color?" Her favorite question. She wanted to meet everyone, know everyone. This tiny little extrovert in a pink tutu, she charmed them all, and not just because she's so stinking cute, although she is. She charmed them because she was legitimately interested in them. You could see it in her eyes. You could hear it in her voice. She looked at each person she was talking to with her sweet, innocent eyes. Innocent eyes. It's a term that I first heard in a book called Like a Child by Timothy Mooney, and I love one of his quotes. He writes this: "Having innocent eyes is a way of seeing the world unburdened by the cumulative, pejorative connotations we gather as we mature." Cumulative, pejorative connotations. Just kind of rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? You know you want to try it, right? Cumulative, pejorative connotations. These mounting, accumulating, growing feelings and ideas that are generally disapproving and negative. Cumulative, pejorative connotations are the exact opposite of innocent eyes. Cumulative, pejorative connotations, they keep us from seeing the world, from seeing the future, from seeing the people around us in the way that God sees it all. Every single one of us begins life with innocent eyes. We don't come into this world with preconceived notions about what life is going to hold for us. We don't come into the world with prejudices or biases, but we learn as we experience, and our innocent eyes become clouded. Through the influences of family, friends, culture, we begin to accumulate judgments about things, about people, about what we believe the future will hold. And all of us have experienced pain in our lives, pain that can lead to broken trust, to weariness and suspicion. But little kids, they don't have any cumulative pejorative connotations yet. Kids don't care if you are white or black or brown or sparkly pink. Actually, they would probably like us a lot better if we were sparkly pink. They don't have a concept of gender difference or inequality. They don't care if you're straight or gay or just not sure. They don't care if you're rich or poor. Little kids don't care if you have a fancy doctoral degree or hadn't finished 6th grade. They don't care if you're tall or short, skinny or stout, in a wheelchair or missing limbs. They don't care if you're conservative or liberal. They don't care if your hair is gray or brown or curly or straight, or if you have hair down to your butt or no hair at all. They don't care if you are completely tattooed or have pierced every outcropping of your body. They don't care. Now, that does not mean that kids don't see differences. If you've ever met a kid, you know that they do. Kids are completely unafraid to stare at someone who is different, to ask questions of people who are different. They noticed differences. It just doesn't bother them. Differences haven't started to accumulate those pejorative connotations yet. Different is just something new and cool to learn about and explore. But we adults have a stockpile of pejorative connotations. A lifetime's worth of layer upon layer upon layer of experiences that insulate us, hide us, cover us. And that keeps us from knowing the people around us and allowing those people to know us in turn. One of Emma Jane's favorite people in the entire world is my great uncle Ed. He's the youngest of my grandfather's brothers, the only one of his generation still living, and he lives on the shores of the St. Lawrence River in New York. Emma Jane and her great Uncle Ed are best buds, kindred spirits. She loves to spend time with him, sitting near him as he tells her stories or as he teaches her to play the harmonica, which, by the way, she takes very seriously, as you can see from the other picture in your bulletin. Well, Uncle Ed is retired now, but he still spends time in his workshop each day refinishing furniture. He is known up and down the St. Lawrence River for his meticulous, tender care for antiques. On one side of his workshop, if you walk in the main door, you'll see a collection of grungy-looking tables and chairs covered with thick, peeling layers of grime and dirt and paint. The wood may be chipped in some places, the legs and backs are loose and wobbly. Most of us walking into that shop would never even take a second glance at those pieces. But Uncle Ed knows that there's something beautiful inside. And so slowly he begins the process of applying chemicals and heat, carefully scraping and sanding and buffing. Layers begin to be stripped away, usually revealing even more layers underneath. It is slow going, it is hard work, but you can see the changes happening. And then after a while, the original wood begins to show. Pine, oak, teak, mahogany. It takes a lot longer to work out the residual paint from those little corners and tight spaces, but in the end, there stands in front of you a beautiful piece of furniture, glossy and gorgeous. I realize that that is actually not a bad analogy for what happens with us when we ask and allow God to work within our lives, to strip away those unhealthy layers that we have accumulated over the years. But unfortunately, we can't just pop ourselves off to a refinishing shop to get away of all of those layers. I sometimes wish it were that easy. It takes us, you and me, time and time and time again, allowing God in. Making that decision over and over again, it changes everything. It heals us. It heals our church. I think that is why our scripture for today is my favorite. Now, I have a lot of favorite scriptures, and you'll learn that over our years together, but Mark 12:28 through 31 is undoubtedly my favorite. So much so that it's what I based my doctoral dissertation upon. In this passage, Jesus is asked by a scholar to be able to summarize the entire, what we call our Old Testament, all of the laws, all of the commandments. He's asked, what is the one most important commandment? And this is actually meant to trick Jesus, to be able to catch him. And yet Jesus must have been waiting for an opportunity like this, to be able to tell to the people who were listening to him what a life following God would truly look like, because he doesn't miss a beat. He says this, the first and most important commandment is this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your mind, and with all of your strength. And a second commandment is like it: you shall love your neighbor as you love yourself. So remarkably simple and so completely challenging. If we truly strive to live by those words, the way that we live, the way that we speak, the way that we act, every part of our lives will move more and more closely to what God truly desires for us, stripping away all of that accumulated junk that holds us back. Living with the innocence like a child, with spirits open in joy to the adventure God places before us, that requires trust. It requires resting in the love of God that gives us a safe place from which to explore. The only way that we can fearlessly move through this life is by loving God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. By loving God at the core of who we are, allowing that love to flow out through our words and actions. Being able to learn more and more about who God is and who God created us to be, and then taking that knowledge out into the world with hope and joy. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Living with innocence and authenticity in this world, it requires an openness to learning about others, to seeing life from their perspective, hearing their stories, knowing their hearts. It means reaching out to people where they are and loving them as they are. Love your neighbor as yourself. Being innocent like a child, it means having our walls come down. It means being open to each other. It means embracing the new and the different. It means growing. It means living our lives out there, changed by what we do and say in here. We desire to reclaim our innocence, to look with true hope and expectation to the future that God has for us, but that is a challenge for us adults. Or is it only a challenge for me? Because we live in the real world. We know the reality, we know the risks, we know all of the ways that it can all fall apart so quickly. Because those cumulative pejorative connotations, they are deeply stacked in us, layered on in each of us, me included. And that can fill us with uncertainty and fear when we face a future that is largely unknown, as individuals, as a family, as a church. We do not know exactly what the future holds for us here at First United Methodist Church of Coral Gables. We don't know exactly what the next few months, the next few years, the next few decades will look like. We don't know what will change. We don't know what will stay the same. And that can cause us to fall back from seeking to love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to instead rely on our own knowledge, our own strength, our own desires. Not knowing that future, that fear, can cause us to retreat from reaching out to love our neighbors as we love ourselves, and instead to seek first our own welfare, our own needs first and foremost. When we are facing the unknown, we human beings have a very strong tendency to, instead of looking around us with open eyes and open hearts, to instead close down and self-protect. It is understandable and very normal, because what is uncertain, what is unknown, is scary. But let's be frank here. The future, it has always been unknown. Always has been, always will be. The unknown future was scary about a century ago. 93 years ago today, this family of faith was chartered. 100 people signed this church's birth certificate that you have in your bulletin this morning. On July 27, 1926, as they scrawled their name on this sheet, they each declared this: "It is my desire to become a charter member of the Coral Gables First Methodist Episcopal Church South. I feel it is a privilege as well as an opportunity to share in the work of our great church here, helping to cooperate in the building of God's kingdom in this world." What an incredible thing to sign onto. What incredible hope that showed. And Coral Gables was a very different place back then. In the years following World War I, there was a race going on to develop this amazing wilderness of tropics here in South Florida. And in just the year before this document was signed in 1925, our city, Coral Gables, was incorporated under the meticulously crafting eye of George Merrick. Only a few years earlier, the Venetian Pool had been no more than an abandoned coral rock quarry. In 1926, when this document was being signed, the Biltmore Hotel was just opening. Expectations were high. Enthusiasm and new ideas were exponentially multiplying as this community took form. Those parents of our church, in signing this document, they formed First Coral Gables with innocent-eyed, bold hopes. As they launched into this new venture, as they looked down into this unknown future for this church, they had great expectation and deep trust in God's guidance. Because they didn't know. They did not know exactly what the future would look like. They didn't know what we would look like. But they committed their signatures to this paper and their lives to the God they sought to serve. And they did it for us. They did it in hopes that future generations would find in this family of faith a deeper connection with the God who created them and who loves them. They did it so that we would have a firm foundation from which we could boldly speak truth and seek justice in our community. They did it with the expectation that this community of believers would continue to grow and innovate and learn, that we would continue to reach out just as they did to a hurting world in real, practical, and healing ways. And so 93 years later, July 28, 2019, we are here. We are here because we want to have those layers of cumulative, pejorative connotations slowly stripped away from our spirits, restoring our innocence and joy. We want to, with childlike trust and hope, to learn more about how to love God with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our mind, and with all our strength. And we want together to reach out to in love to those around us, our neighbors, those God puts in our path each day, our brothers and sisters in this world, in the same way that we love ourselves. And so this morning, with open eyes and a heart that is full, I declare this, and I pray that you will too. It is my desire to be a joyful, bold member of this community of First United Methodist Church of Coral Gables. I feel it is a privilege as well as an opportunity to share in the work of our great church here, helping to cooperate in the building of God's kingdom in the world. Thanks be to God. Amen.